And I'm getting ready to put on my intellectual gloves
Okay.
so you won't knock me out, because I know you have a degree in ethnomusicology.
Yes.
You're dovetailing right into your book, Rhythm, Ritual, and Resistance.
Exactly.
Africa is alive in the Black Indians of New Orleans.
Robin Williams started playing cello at the age of 7 and received a full scholarship to study music at the age of 16. She then transferred to the Indiana University School of Music, where she connected with the renowned jazz educator David Baker, who then became her mentor. As a cellist in New Orleans, she recorded string tracks on several album projects for artists like Better Than Ezra, the Cajun Ramones Manu, and contemporary jazz orchestra from Marvin Williams, with whom she won BET Jazz Discoveries in 1997. She worked with David Baker to produce the opening of the first Indianapolis Jazz Festival with James Moody on saxophone. In 2000, she spearheaded a multidisciplinary and multicultural arts education initiative for the city of Indianapolis, which included 54 schools. She opened the Smithsonian exhibition and created over 80 exhibits and international performing arts and cultural programs. She hosted Barack and Michelle Obama for the Today Show at the Arts Center and spearheaded a new cultural center for Fulton County, Atlanta, where she created exhibitions for the Brazilian photographer Linda Costa. She presented a 20-year-long curatorial exhibition project on the OSOGBO School of Art in Nigeria. In 2017, she finished her master's in ethnomusicology and ethnography. And for the Tricentennial of New Orleans, she published her resulting research as a book, Rhythm, Ritual, and Resistance. Africa is Alive in the Black Indians of New Orleans. She installed the book at the Smithsonian's Library in the National Museum of African Art in 2018, and in 2019 created an exhibition based on that book alone. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Miss Robin Williams.
Later on, when I went to study with Dave Baker, I kind of wanted to live out my jazz dreams on the cello.
You seem to have had a lot of interaction with the Marsalis family in New Orleans. You worked with Ellis, Jason. Were they easy to work with?
I'm going to reserve my answer. We got to see Miles's last performance, so I'll never forget that, because at the time we didn't know it was Miles's last performance, but that's what it ended up being.
I don't want to add this too. I want to tell you this. I'm proud to say that I did play with Wynton Marsalis at Carnegie Hall. He
That's
was
nice.
performing with the Boys Choir Harlem. So they said, you know what? Why don't you come out and do a song with the band? So Wynton said, okay, let's do Joy Spring, Clifford Brown song at the rehearsal.
Okay.
So Wynton said, wow, I don't remember the song. Let me see if I remember the melody. Come on, he picks it up in 2 minutes and we're swinging. So I just wanted to say that.
But can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Were you playing upright or electric?
electric,
What?
electric, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Winton let you play electric on
He
stage?
let me play electric. I mean, well, look at Bob Cranshaw, who played with Sonny Rollins all those years, electric. He couldn't carry an acoustic anymore.
I understand.
Look at
But
Jaco
you know,
Pastorius. I mean, I feel if a person's playing a rubber band and they're playing the jazz vernacular and soloing in that jazz vein, you got to give them respect, whatever it is. It's always been.
you
It's always been.
feel and I feel and you feel the same.
Yeah.
However, Winton was a real stickler. I remember walking into the 100th anniversary of Louis Armstrong's birthday. Had a big thing at Gallier Hall in New Orleans, and we walked in, and you better not bring an electric bass. That's all I'm going to
Uh-oh.
say, or an amp.
Well,
So
but
it was like
that's
that.
why the electric bass has always been the bastard. I mean, what I'm saying is Charlie Christian, on guitar, Kenny Burrell. Electric guitar has always, Wes Montgomery,
Mm-hmm.
the guitar electrified has always been respected, but somehow the electric bass hasn't. But I don't want to stay on that. I have so much more to talk about you. And I'm getting ready to put on my intellectual gloves
Okay.
so you won't knock me out, because I know you have a degree in ethnomusicology.
Yes. And that was something.
And ethnography as well. Now, what does that entail, actually?
Ethnography is a function of ethnomusicology, meaning that if you're studying the music of world culture and how music reflects what that culture, the meaning of that culture, or adds to, it's a reflection of the meaning of the culture,
Right.
then in order to go in and actually document that, that's the ethnography part of it.
Okay.
So you're documenting culture. And I've always done that, whether it was just writing about it or taking photographs or trying to even create situations where people could express and showcase and, share with the rest of the world their unique and special culture. So I think on that level, I've always been an ethnomusicologist. And I had one of the greatest teachers also at IU Bloomington who put me on that path. Her name was Portia Maultsby. Dr. Maultsby's world renowned, and in fact, she was just part of the new Nashville Museum project of Black music. So she helped to set the table for that project.
Now, did your degree happen before, after, or during your association and working with Putumayo, the record company?
Well, we'll back up a little bit because when I came back to Indiana, I was with the orchestra, and then I really, I had this great love for arts education all of a sudden because I did a music program for the kids, and it just put me on a whole other part of my path.
Right.
And so I was able to get a lot of funding, and we were able to start this initiative because what I saw the problem was in Indianapolis was that kids weren't relating to each other well, and across cultural and racial barriers. And so I said, well, let's do something that is quintessentially multicultural. And so that's when I discovered that Putumayo had some CDs and curriculum. And I worked with the education director in New York. And that's when you and I met, actually.
Yes.
I lost my phone in the cab, remember, and all this kind of crazy.
I remember.
Yeah. So I was actually there meeting with Putumayo to talk about expanding what they had done and creating something that was even sort of more far-reaching and intensive with artist residencies and special programs and summer programs for that particular initiative. So we ended up doing that for like 5 years. in Indianapolis public schools and some of the county schools as well. There were 54 schools all total. And
Right.
the kids loved it. And in fact, somebody said, "Hey, let's do a Mardi Gras parade." And I said, "Okay." And so the jazz club downtown in the arts district said, "We love this idea. We're going to get a permit." We had a second line. The kids, about 100 kids and parents came out the first year. The second year, we had 500 kids and parents. And
Wow.
that thing just kept growing and growing and growing. It was a great opportunity for them to learn about a different culture, world culture, but then demonstrate what they had learned in a joyful way, boogieing down the street. And so the kids loved it. They loved it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's still going on. Am I correct?
They don't have the parade anymore. They really should.
Wow.
They really should. But, there was an article that came out that talked about this sort of resurgence when we talk about taking neighborhoods and I don't want to say gentrification necessarily, but,
Right.
just expanding neighborhoods with the arts as an anchor. And so the article came out talking about how the parade was a signal of that kind of, resurgence of culture and,
Hmm.
you know, seeing more art galleries, restaurants, businesses, mixed use properties and things like that. That actually happened right after we started doing the parade.
Right.
So
Right.
culture
I
is a
always,
great thing.
yeah, I always tell people when I speak to, audiences, I always say, music is culture expressed through sound. And every culture has their own language and their own instruments that they use to express that sound.
And it's all connected,
That's
you
right.
know, it's all
That's right.
connected. And on a spiritual level, specifically, that's what opened my eyes to different types of spirituality as well, was the music
Now,
and the
now
function of music.
you're dovetailing right into your book, Rhythm, Ritual, and Resistance.
Exactly.
Africa is alive in the Black Indians of New Orleans.
The book really demonstrates how, and this is what I saw, and this is what I asked Big Chief about, and wanted to understand it better, how a masquerade on Mardi Gras morning becomes a whole other thing. And it's a way to maintain identity. So when enslaved Africans were brought here, a lot of them would escape up the bayous and they would mask as Indian to get on the pirogue and go up the bayou to escape. This is when the masking Indian thing started happening. But let's look at it. The culture, like for instance, the Natchez Indians brought in 400 enslaved Africans into their culture, into their tribe. You have the language of the drum. You have the language of herbal medicine. You have masquerade things that are very similar. Um, you know, looking at nature in terms of spirituality, things like that. So it's like, there's just too many commonalities. That's why the cultures came together the way they did. But in essence, because you had a people whose land was torn from them and a people torn from their own land, you also had that connection too.
Right.
Okay, so there was just a lot going on, but essentially for this masking Indian things to survive for almost, over 300 years, that's just remarkable to me.
Hmm.
And a lot of the guys that do this, they were taught by their grandfather or their great grandfather or whatever, but they don't really know why,
Hmm.
you know? And in my book, I talk about this idea of genetic memory and trying to maintain identity through yet another sort of expression. And
Right.
that's really what we talk about. And then I show some of the actual examples of that in the book with
Hmm.
photos and descriptions. So
Right.
linguistic
Sure.
characteristics, masquerade, musical characteristics from Senegal that you can easily hear in New Orleans music with the bambara and the bambula beats. All of that is
Right.
still maintained over space and time all these years later.
Right.
And that's why New Orleans is as special as it is.
Sure.
That's why
Eh,
New Orleans is what it
Right.
is.
And this is kind of what led you probably to your initiation in Yoruba. Am I correct?
I've been initiated in Yoruba Ifa, and also in Indian meditation and spirituality as
Yes.
well. So
Very, very, very deep stuff. I mean, for people that don't know,
exactly.
it can get scary. They can like, well, what do you mean by that? But we're dealing with a lot of different elements, and there might be a reason. How
But
many lives?
do you know
What I
how
mean, what I
much
mean,
it's connected?
well,
It's
what I mean by that
connected.
is, how many lives have we lived? Maybe in another life, maybe in another way, you were connected to all of this, which is why you have a innate connectivity to these cultures.
My first indication of this was I was at IU Bloomington, and there was a man who was a Shona Mbira player from Zimbabwe. His name was Ifat Majuro. He had played with Peter Gabriel and Annie Lennox and a bunch of people. He'd done a lot of really interesting things um, in commercial music. But he came to the university, and I hooked him up with a guy who was like a drum maker and drum tech. And he said, "Oh my God, I've been trying to reach him for 3 years. I've been writing him letters in Africa, and you just bring him to me." And so
Yeah.
we get on the elevator, and Ifat looks at me and he says, "You have an African soul."
Mm,
And he says, "You know things."
yeah.
And I never forgot that, because I like, what is he talking about? But then I realized later on when I delved into all this stuff and I was in New Orleans doing all this research and things, it was like, man, I can't deny my inkling and my inquiry and my love of this culture. It's like, I don't know what that's about. People
Right.
have questioned it, believe me.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is she so interested in African
Right.
culture, African music?
Right. Right.
But New Orleans also has a big tradition with Madame Laveau, right?
Well, Marie
Well, what I mean,
Laveau,
they've always had this like insidious. It's always been there. People don't talk about it that much. Connection to voodoo, or which voodoo goes back to Africa. You're dealing with Santeria, Umbanda,
all of it
Candomblé, all of it,
is,
same
yeah,
root.
all of it is well, I don't know if you've looked at this new what's it called, High on the Hog on Netflix, but it goes back like the very first episode of that. The guy goes all the way back to Senegal, and he goes back to Nigeria, and he's in Benin, and he goes to the Ouida people, and you look at the point of departure, and then you look at that culture that's there still, and how it was disseminated in the diaspora, through
Right,
slavery, basically. I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
right.
it's a terrible thing, but at the same time, you look at it and say, "Wow, what incredible influence these cultures have had because of this terrible thing that happened." You
Yes,
know, and so I think it's one of the most misunderstood things, because anything that's African is going to be looked at askance. But now there's a resurgence of African spirituality in America, which I think
yes.
is interesting. And, there's definitely something to it.
And I'm proud to say, for me, I was very fortunate to meet and to be able to play. I recorded 3 albums with Manu Dibango from Cameroon. He's a composer of Soul Makossa. And because of him, he took me to Michael Olatunji, Baba Olatunji house, who did the famous album, which helped introduce African music. I ended up playing for Olatunji when Manu Dibango went back to Paris, because he was staying in Paris and writing a lot of music for television and movies. Now, I know you can't divulge, and you shouldn't divulge, any of the specificities that happen in your initiation. But have you ever had any experiences that you would say was extraordinary, where maybe orishas or something spoke to you or through you?
Every day. One of the things we learn, and it even in other types of spirituality or spiritual systems, is that one must be extremely aware and open to signs and signals. So pay attention. That's one of the most beautiful things about being initiated is being able to pay attention to what happens, in everyday life. If you're paying attention, then maybe you're going to respond and react differently
Right.
To signs and symbols and things that come up, even within nature or animals or just stuff that happens,
Right.
So I found that on a daily basis, I may see something, or especially my connection with my ancestors is a really deep and relevant one. So I see signs of them all the time because I know they're around. Yeah.
Sure. And I know you work with a Cuban percussionist, Alexey Marti.
Yes.
How was that?
Well, it's funny. We met in 2008 when I was first the director of the New Orleans Jazz Institute, and he had come over with his wife, who was teaching in New Orleans at the time. And she brought
Cuban
him
as well? She was Cuban?
No, she's from Colombia, and so she brought him to me. She speaks English very well,
Right.
and he spoke maybe 5 words of English at the time. He started out with "Ia quiere." Are you familiar?
Of course, yeah, Kenny, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. In the 70s, they were hugely popular.
Extremely, yeah. So
Yeah.
he came up within, very traditional Santero kind of environment because his family was all, involved. And so as a percussionist, he learned very young. And then he played, with Iakere and other groups in Cuba. But when he came to New Orleans, he was with Bill Summers. I don't know if you, Bill
From
Summers.
the Headhunters, Herbie Hancock.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
Summer's Heat,
Great stuff,
Are
yeah.
you familiar with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Odds and Ends Jazz. This episode of Odds and Ends Jazz was dedicated to the memory of Phoebe Jacobs, Stanley Crouch, Michael Cogswell, and to the new executive director, Regina Bain. And thank you for checking out the 9 lives of Robin Williams. And tune in next week. Keep on swinging, good night, and stay bright.